Welcome. I am the Frail Blaze. Today's story: The Street Light. My neighborhood is just like any other. Boring houses with small yards. Boring people inside with boring jobs. This neighborhood is just as normal as any other, or so I thought. When I first moved into my house, I noticed something strange. The street light right next to my house flickers. This is nothing too unusual. Maybe it was just faulty wiring, or just an old light bulb inside. For some reason, I always felt uneasy when I was near that light, as if it was somehow warning me about something. I always avoided walking under that particular light, and if I was in my yard at night with my dogs, then I would have my own outside lights on. I'm not a person that was scared of the dark or anything, but this particular darkness felt different, somehow sinister. I thought I was just being paranoid, just being a big baby. I kept saying it was nothing. Until it happened. It was a particularly cold night, with a bit of heavy rain. I was taking the dogs outside to use the bathroom for the last time of the night. And as we headed back inside, I caught a glimpse of the light. As I looked at it, the flickering seemed to increase in speed. Then it seemed to just turn off for a few seconds. And while the light was off, I swear I could see something standing under it. I couldn't exactly make out how big it was, but it had to be big, because it almost reached the top of the streetlight. It was a somewhat slender figure with long limbs and what seemed to be horns, and the bones of wings? I swore I saw it, but then the light came back on and it was gone. Must have been my imagination, I thought, as I closed my door and locked up the house. I completely ignored the incident and got comfortable in my room. My dogs were sleeping soundly in their beds, and all seemed quiet, aside from the rain outside. From my bedroom window, I could still see the light flickering, and occasionally it would just turn off. But I thought nothing of it and started to get ready for bed. Then from outside, I heard a dragging noise, like something heavy was being dragged through the cold, wet street. I looked outside but saw nothing, even though the sound was getting louder. Outside, I saw a group of teenagers taking a late night walk. Usually nobody walks down this street, but I guess they were just in the mood to do something new. After a few moments, they got really close to the street light, and I heard them joke about it being haunted. I let out a chuckle myself, but then I stopped once I heard the screaming. I looked outside once more and only saw two teenagers left. They looked terrified, and they were covered in a gray, oily-looking substance. They were running and screaming. The closest house to them was mine, so they ran to my door. My dogs were already at the door, barking and scratching. They've never been so energetic for me to open the door, but I assumed they were worried about the teenagers screaming on the other side. I quickly opened my door to let them in, and as soon as they were inside, they shut and locked the door. Then they barricaded the door and windows with anything they could find. I tried calming them down and assuring them they were safe, but they were just too terrified to talk. After a few minutes, they were calm enough, and finally, I could talk to them. I felt bad for them, and these boys were shaking in fear as they told me what they saw. They told me how they were walking. A giant monster appeared under the streetlight, and they tried running, but the monster was swift and grabbed a few of their friends. It threw a gray blob at them to slow them down, and the mysterious gray matter burned their skin. So they ran to the first house they saw, mine. I let them get cleaned up in the bathroom and wrapped their injuries. I gave them some tea and some food. I then offered to drive them home, but they were still too scared to go outside. So I let them stay the night, since it was late anyway. It took a while for them to fall asleep, but they eventually did. I heard a strange noise outside and couldn't resist the urge to look. A car was driving down the road, and as soon as it reached the streetlight, the light turned off, and a monster appeared. The car was lifted off the ground, and I watched as the monster tore the car into pieces and ate everyone inside. Then it ate the car. I was frozen in fear, and I watched the monster turn its body to face my house. Then we locked eyes. The monster became more demonic looking each second. Its eyes were like red, glowing fire, and its body was covered in thorns. The horns atop its head twisted towards each other. Its body seemed to drip with a gray substance, and its figure seemed to tower over me. The more I looked at it, the closer it seemed to get. It stopped moving once it was right in front of my house. The monster then hunched down to my window and seemed to laugh. As it laughed, a gray, oily substance leaked from its eyes and mouth. The gray matter pooled on the floor and seeped into the walls of my house. Then the monster was gone. I went to go check on the sleeping boys in the living room, but instead found them covered in the gray matter. Then their bodies seemed to disintegrate, and the gray substance seeped back outside of the house. The monster was next to my window again and scooped up the gray matter into its mouth and drank it. Then it looked at me and told me in an eerie and deep voice, "Shh, don't tell anyone about this, and I'll let you and your dogs live. But once a year I need to eat, so when you see me, make sure to have some friends over, or maybe don't help my next meal escape." I very slowly nodded in agreement as I watched the monster disappear under the streetlight. I haven't seen it in a while. Maybe I imagined the entire thing. Maybe it was all in my head. Would you like to come over to find out? Chilling. Let me know what you thought in the comments below. And I hope you join me again.